It's 1987. You're sitting in a sunlit piazza in Milan, sipping espresso that tastes like liquid gold. Around you, everything screams excess. The fashion is loud and unapologetic. The hair? Absolutely massive. And the economy? Oh, the economy is on fire. Italy has just done the unthinkable. They've overtaken the United Kingdom to become the world's fifth largest economy. They're calling it Il Sorpasso, the overtaking. The vibe is electric, intoxicating, unstoppable. You pay for your espresso with a fistful of lira that feels like monopoly money, and you think to yourself, this party will never end. Now snap back to reality. It's 2025. That party didn't just end. The police raided it, arrested everyone, and burned the house to the ground. Italy hasn't just slowed down. It has completely flatlined. It's become the only developed economy that has essentially stopped growing for over 2 decades. While the United States economy has roughly doubled since the year 2000, Italy's GDP per capita is stuck in a time loop, hovering around the same levels it saw when The Matrix was in theaters and people were panicking about Y2K. We're not talking about a recession. We're talking about economic zombification. A slow-motion collapse that nobody seems able to stop. But here's where it gets truly twisted. The seeds of this disaster weren't planted by the euro or by bad luck, or even by globalization. They were planted during those golden years, the 1980s party years. Italy is suffering from a very specific, very fatal addiction to a ghost from the past. That ghost's name? The lira. Today we're performing an autopsy on the sick man of Europe. We're going to dissect the 7 specific reasons why this beautiful, culturally rich country is economically doomed. Buckle up, because this is the story of how an entire nation got hooked on an economic drug it can never have again. Welcome to the Italian stagnation. Let's start with the ghost haunting every Italian boardroom. You cannot understand why Italy is failing today without understanding how it succeeded in the past. And when I say succeeded, imagine me making the biggest air quotes you've ever seen. Back in the 1970s, 80s, and early 90s, Italy had a superpower. It wasn't efficiency. It wasn't cutting-edge innovation like Silicon Valley. It wasn't German engineering precision. It was something much simpler, a printing press. Here's how the Italian economic miracle actually worked for decades. Let's say you own a factory in Turin making washing machines. You're competing against a guy named Hans in Germany. Hans invests millions of euros in robotics, automation, and research to make his washing machines better and cheaper. His products are cutting edge. His factory runs like clockwork. You don't want to buy robots. Robots are expensive. Robots require training. Robots require modernization. So instead, you make a phone call to your friends in Rome. The government looks at the trade balance, sees your washing machines losing market share, and says, "Don't worry, Luigi. We got you." The Bank of Italy would then devalue the lira. Overnight, your currency becomes worth less compared to the German mark. This means your washing machines suddenly become 20% cheaper for Americans or French people to buy. Not because you improved them, not because you innovated, but because your money is now garbage. This was called competitive devaluation. And it was Italy's favorite economic drug. For decades this worked beautifully. It kept Italian exports flying off shelves worldwide. It allowed small, inefficient family businesses to dominate global markets without ever really modernizing. Why spend money on R&D when the central bank can just slash your currency's value and make you competitive again? But like every drug, competitive devaluation had a dark side. When you devalue your currency to boost exports, you're essentially importing inflation. Everything you buy from abroad, oil, gas, raw materials, food, gets more expensive. So the cost of living skyrockets. To fix that, Italy had something called the Scala Mobile, the escalator. This wasn't a way to get to the second floor of a shopping mall. It was an automatic wage indexation system. If inflation went up, wages automatically went up to match it. Sounds great, right? Wrong. It created a death spiral. Currency devaluation caused inflation. Inflation triggered the Scala Mobile, automatically raising wages. Higher wages made businesses less profitable. So businesses cried to the government who, you guessed it, devalued the currency again. By the early 1990s, the lira was a joke. In 1992, during a currency crisis partly orchestrated by George Soros shorting everything in sight, the lira collapsed so hard it was forced out of the European exchange rate mechanism. It was a national humiliation. Now here's where everything goes wrong. In 1999, Italy joined the euro. Imagine taking a guy who's been addicted to painkillers for 40 years. A guy who relies on those pills to get out of bed, to go to work, to function at all. Now imagine you flush his entire stash down the toilet. Cold turkey. No rehab. No support system. Just, good luck, buddy. That's exactly what happened when Italy adopted the euro. They lost the ability to devalue. They lost the printing press. Suddenly, those washing machine factories in Turin had to compete with Hans in Germany based on actual efficiency and actual quality. And guess what? They couldn't. Because they'd spent decades hooked on the easy fix. Italian industry never built the muscle needed for real competition. They were flabby, weak, and completely dependent. When the euro locked the exchange rate, the curtain fell. Italy was left naked on the European stage. And the audience, the global market, was not impressed. This is the curse of the lira. It's the phantom limb pain of an entire economy, constantly reaching for a lever that isn't there anymore. So the devaluation drug is gone. But surely Italian businesses adapted, right? Surely they looked at the new euro landscape and said, okay, time to get serious. Time to digitize. Time to scale up. No. This brings us to reason number 2, and honestly, this is the one that keeps economists awake at night, screaming into their pillows. It's the productivity flatline. Let me hit you with a statistic that should absolutely terrify you. Since Italy joined the euro in 1999, its total factor productivity, economists speak for how efficiently you use labor and capital, has been essentially zero. Actually worse than zero. In some sectors, it has actively declined. While workers in Germany, France, and even Spain were becoming more productive every year, producing more output per hour, Italy just stopped. According to recent data, labor productivity in Italy grew at just 0.2% annually from 1995 to 2024, compared to 1.2% for the EU as a whole. What? Welcome to the Peter Pan problem of Italian business. Italy is famous for its small and medium enterprises, what they call PMI. You know the vibe. The charming family-owned leather shop in Florence, the third-generation ceramic maker in Sicily, the boutique vineyard in Tuscany. It's romantic. It's artisanal. It's what makes Italy, well, Italy. But in the brutal world of modern global economics, it's a death sentence. In Italy, over 90% of businesses have fewer than 10 employees. These are microfirms. And here's the brutal truth about microfirms. They don't innovate. If you're a company of 5 people, usually the dad as CEO, mom as accountant, son as manager, and 2 cousins handling operations, you're not investing 5 million euros in AI-driven logistics. You're not hiring high-priced consultants to streamline supply chains. You're not spending money on R&D. You're just trying to survive until August so you can close for vacation. This is the dwarfism of Italian capitalism. But why do companies stay small? Is it just culture? Is it that Italians love working with family? No. It's rational behavior because the Italian state actively punishes you for growing. Imagine you're an Italian business owner with 14 employees. Business is good. You want to hire a 15th person to expand. Stop right there. In Italy, crossing the threshold of 15 employees is like walking into a minefield. Once you hit 15, a massive cascade of labor protection laws kicks in. It becomes nearly impossible to fire anyone. Union representation requirements explode. The bureaucracy triples. So what do? You don't hire the 15th person. Or you hire them off the books. We'll get to the shadow economy later. Or you split your company into 2 smaller entities of 7 people each to stay under the radar. This keeps companies artificially small. And because they stay small, they stay inefficient. They can't achieve economies of scale. They can't export effectively to China or the US because they don't have the volume. Then there's the management problem. In the US or UK, if a family business gets big enough, eventually the founder steps aside and hires a professional CEO. Someone with an MBA who knows what they're doing. In Italy, the business is passed from father to eldest son, or to daughter if she's lucky, regardless of whether that kid is a genius or completely incompetent. This dynastic management is rampant. Studies show that firms managed by the founder's eldest child perform significantly worse than those run by external professionals. Meanwhile, over 70% of Italian SMEs fail before their 5th year, and in 2024 alone, over 310,000 companies closed while only 190,000 were founded. So you have millions of tiny companies, terrified of growing because of regulations, run by people who got the job through birthright rather than merit, unable to invest in technology because they have no capital. And we wonder why productivity hasn't moved since the 1990s? While the rest of the world was building Amazon, Google, and Volkswagen, Italy was doubling down on Giovanni & Sons leather belts. And while Giovanni makes a damn good belt, he can't carry the GDP of a G7 nation on his back. If the productivity problem is a chronic illness, this next point is terminal cancer. You cannot have economic growth without people. It's basic math. You need workers to make things and you need consumers to buy things. Italy is running out of both. Let's take a trip to the beautiful Italian countryside. You've probably seen those viral articles. Buy a house in Sicily for €1. Sounds like a dream, right? You imagine fixing up a rustic villa, drinking wine under olive trees, living la dolce vita. But ask yourself, why is the house €1? It's not because the mayor is feeling generous. It's because the previous owner died, their children moved to London or Milan 20 years ago, and there is literally nobody left in the village to buy it. These aren't real estate deals. They're desperate screams for help from dying communities. Italy has one of the lowest birth rates in the known universe. To keep a population stable, you need a fertility rate of 2.1 children per woman. That's the replacement rate. Italy is currently sitting at about 1.2 children per woman. They're not just shrinking, they're evaporating. Last year, Italy recorded fewer births than at any time since the country's unification in 1861. Think about that. Fewer babies were born in modern, wealthy, peaceful Italy than during World War I, when half the men were in trenches and the Spanish flu was ravaging the continent. This creates a terrifying economic shape called the inverted pyramid. In a healthy economy, you have a huge base of young workers supporting a small tip of retirees. In Italy, the pyramid is upside down. You have a massive, swelling generation of retirees resting precariously on the shoulders of a shrinking, crumbling base of young workers. This leads to what I call the pension bomb. Italy spends nearly 17% of its entire GDP on pensions, the second highest in the OECD, right behind Greece. Every year, the government takes a massive slice of the budget, money that could go to high-speed internet, schools, green energy, or tax cuts, and funnels it directly into pension checks. The politics of this are toxic because elderly voters make up the largest voting bloc. No politician dares touch their pensions. It's political suicide. So you get policies like Quota 100, introduced a few years ago, which actually allowed people to retire earlier. In a country that's rapidly aging, the government literally paid people to stop working sooner. It makes zero economic sense, but it makes perfect political sense. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Taxes on the young are astronomical because they have to pay for the old. Because taxes are so high and salaries are so low, remember that productivity flatline? Young couples can't afford to buy houses or have kids. So they don't have kids, which makes the demographic crisis worse, which raises taxes further. It's a snake eating its own tail. And the snake is slowly dying of old age. Now let's say you're brave. You ignore the currency issues, the demographics, the productivity crisis. You decide, I'm going to start a business in Italy anyway. I have a great idea. I have funding. Let's go. Welcome to hell. Actually, hell might be preferable because at least in hell you know the rules. The World Bank's doing business rankings have consistently placed Italy terribly, often falling behind countries like Rwanda, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan in contract enforcement. Let me give you a specific, painful example: the civil justice system. Say you're a supplier. You sell €100,000 worth of goods to a client. The client takes the goods, smiles, waves, and decides not to pay you. In the UK or Germany, you take them to court. It takes a few months. The judge looks at the contract, bangs the gavel, and the sheriff collects your money. In Italy? Better get comfortable. The average time to resolve a commercial dispute in Italy is over 1,000 days. That's nearly 3 years. And that's just the average. If the other guy has a good lawyer and knows how to work the appeal system, it can drag on for a decade. If you're a small business, you can't survive 3 years without that €100,000. You go bankrupt waiting for justice. This creates a culture of non-compliance. Bad actors know the system is broken, so they abuse it. They know they don't have to pay their debts because by the time the court forces them to, you'll be out of business or dead. And it's not just the courts. It's the sheer weight of red tape everywhere. Italy has a legendary addiction to laws. It's estimated that Italy has over 150,000 laws currently in force. For comparison, France has about 7,000. Germany has about 5,000. 150,000 laws. It's a legal jungle so dense that not even the regulators know what's legal and what isn't. Opening a company requires an average of 6 weeks. In Estonia, it takes 18 minutes. Look at the super bonus disaster. This was a recent scheme to jumpstart the economy by giving people tax credits to renovate their homes. Sounds good, right? But the regulations governing it changed literally over 30 times in 2 years. Architects, banks, and construction companies were paralyzed. One day the paperwork was blue, the next day red, the next day the program was cancelled, the next day it was back but only for condos. This uncertainty is poison. Foreign investors look at this chaos and say, no thanks. Why would Tesla or Google build a massive factory in Italy if it takes 5 years to get a permit? You can't fire anyone when needed, and if a supplier rips you off, the courts won't help you for 3 years. They wouldn't. They go to Poland. They go to Ireland. They go to Spain. Italy misses out on billions of euros in foreign direct investment every year, not because the country isn't attractive, but because the state is unworkable. The bureaucracy in Italy isn't just an annoyance. It's a tax on time. And in the modern economy, speed is everything. If you're slow, you're dead. Italy is currently moving at the speed of a sloth swimming through molasses. So we have a stagnant economy, a dying population, and a nightmare government. If you're a smart, ambitious 25-year-old Italian with a master's degree in engineering or physics, what do? You leave. This is the brain drain, or as Italians call it, la fuga dei cervelli, the flight of the brains. And this might be the most heartbreaking part of the Italian tragedy. Italy has a fantastic education system. Their high schools, Liceo Classico, Scientifico, provide rigorous education. Their universities like Politecnico di Milano and Bocconi produce world-class engineers and economists. The Italian state spends hundreds of thousands of euros educating these kids. They pay for their healthcare, their schooling, their subsidized university tuition. And then, the moment these kids are ready to become productive tax-paying citizens, Italy hands them to Germany, the UK, and the US, for free. It is the worst trade deal in history. Italy is exporting diamonds, human capital, and importing sand in return. Why are they leaving? Let's look at the numbers. An entry-level engineer in Milan might make 1,400 euros per month. That same engineer, hopping on a 2-hour Ryanair flight to Munich or Dublin, can instantly make 3,500 euros to 4,500 euros per month. But it's not just about money. It's about the gerontocracy ruled by the old. In Italian workplaces, meritocracy is often a dirty word. You don't get promoted because you're the best. You get promoted because you have seniority or because you know the right people. It's a feudal system disguised as a corporate ladder. Young Italians are tired of waiting their turn. They're tired of being treated like interns until they're 40 years old. There's a grim joke among expats in London. What do you call an Italian with a PhD in physics? Answer: a barista in Soho. But the reality is that physicist is probably working at a hedge fund in Canary Wharf or a tech lab in Cambridge. And even if they were working as a barista, they might still have more disposable income and independence in London than living in their parents' basement in Rome at age 32. The statistics are damning. Over the last decade, nearly 1 million Italians have emigrated. And these aren't retirees looking for Florida sun. These are the young, the educated, the mobile. When the smartest people leave, innovation leaves with them. You lose the people who start companies. You lose the people who file patents. You lose the people who push for political change. You're left with a society that's less dynamic, more conservative, and less capable of solving its own problems. This massive exodus acts as a pressure release valve for the government. If these angry, unemployed young people stayed in Italy, there might be a revolution. There might be massive protests demanding change. But instead they just buy a one-way ticket to Berlin. The pressure is released and the status quo, the rot, continues undisturbed. It's a tragedy of wasted potential. Italy is bleeding out its future, one boarding pass at a time. If you look at a satellite map of Italy at night, you can literally see the problem glowing in the dark. The north, from Milan to Venice, is ablaze with light. It's industrialized, connected, wealthy. If northern Italy were its own country, it would be one of the richest nations in Europe, competing with Bavaria or Switzerland. But scan south past Rome, past Naples, down into the Mezzogiorno, the south. The lights get dimmer. The roads deteriorate. The economy vanishes. This is la question meridionale, the southern question. It's the oldest and most stubborn wound in Italian history, and it's actively dragging the entire country underwater. The GDP per capita in the south is roughly half that of the north. We're not talking about New York versus Alabama. We're talking about the difference between Germany and Tunisia existing inside the same borders, using the same currency, governed by the same parliament. Why is the south so broken? It's easy to blame the mafia, and we will. But it's deeper than that. It's infrastructure. For decades, Italy promised to build modern highways and high-speed rail to the south. But projects either never started or became national memes, like the Salerno-Reggio Calabria highway, which took over 50 years to finish. Imagine trying to run a modern logistics company from Calabria when your trucks are stuck on single-lane roads paved when disco was popular. You can't. Then there's the mafia tax. In regions like Sicily, Calabria, and Campania, organized crime isn't just a movie trope, it's an economic parasite. It's called il piso, protection money. Small businesses have to pay a percentage of their revenue to the local mob just to stay open. This acts like a massive invisible tax on the entire southern economy. It kills profitability. It scares away foreign investment. Who wants to open a factory in Naples if they have to negotiate with the Camorra to get their trucks out of the warehouse? But the real tragedy is the dependency. Because the private sector in the south is so weak, the state became the only employer. In some southern provinces, a staggering percentage of the workforce is employed by the public sector. Forest rangers, municipal clerks, endless administrators. This creates a clientelism system. You don't get a job because you're good, you get a job because you voted for the right politician who controls hiring at the local post office. The North resents this deeply. The industrious factories of Lombardy feel like they're being taxed to death to subsidize what they see as a corrupt, inefficient South. This tension fuels political instability in movements like the Northern League, who used to advocate for literally cutting the South loose. Until Italy figures out how to integrate the South, how to make it a productive engine rather than welfare-dependent, the national economy is running on one leg. And you can't win a race hopping on one leg. Now we arrive at the final boss. The number that hangs over Italy like the sword of Damocles. 2.9 trillion euros. That's Italy's national debt. It's roughly 140% of their GDP. It's a number so large the human brain can't really comprehend it. So let's visualize it. Imagine every single person in Italy, from newborn babies in the hospital to 100-year-old nanas, waking up this morning with roughly 48,000 euros in debt strapped to their chest. This debt is the chain that binds everything else we've talked about. Remember when we said Italy needs to invest, needs to modernize schools, needs to fix the courts, needs to build digital infrastructure? They can't. They're broke. Every year, Italy pays roughly 80 euros to 90 billion euros just in interest on its debt. They're not paying down the principal, they're just paying rent on money they already spent in the 80s and 90s. That 90 billion euros is dead money. It's not building hospitals. It's not lowering taxes. It's not funding startups. It's just disappearing into the void of the bond market. And this makes Italy incredibly vulnerable. They're at the mercy of the spread, the difference between interest rates on safe German bonds versus risky Italian bonds. When investors get scared, maybe because of a pandemic or a war in Ukraine, or a stupid comment by an Italian politician, they sell Italian debt. Interest rates spike. If that rate gets too high, the interest payments become impossible to afford. The country goes bankrupt. This nearly happened in 2011. Italy was on the brink of default. The entire Eurozone was about to collapse. The European Central Bank had to step in with Mario Draghi's famous, "whatever it takes" speech to save them. But here's the terrifying reality. Italy is too big to fail, but it's also too big to save. Greece was small. The EU could bail out Greece. Italy is the third largest economy in the Eurozone. If Italy defaults, there's not enough money in the German treasury to bail them out. It would be a financial apocalypse that would make 2008 look like a picnic. It would likely destroy the euro and shatter the European Union. So Italy is trapped in a zombie state. They can't spend their way out because of the debt. They can't grow their way out because of the productivity and demographic crisis. They're just drifting, refinancing loans, praying that interest rates stay low, hoping the next crisis doesn't push them over the edge. It's a high-wire act with no safety net, performed by an acrobat who's getting older and slower every single day. So is this it? Is Italy destined to become a museum, a third-world country with first-class ruins? I know this has been heavy. We've looked at the addiction to devaluation, the flatline productivity, the demographic collapse, the bureaucratic nightmare, the brain drain, the north-south divide, and the mountain of debt. It looks hopeless. But Italy has surprised the world before. This is a country that rose from the ashes of World War II to become an industrial powerhouse in barely 20 years. This is a country with immense reserves of private wealth. Italians are famously good savers, even if their state is broke. Italy is a global superpower in culture, luxury, tourism, and lifestyle. The Made in Italy brand is still one of the most valuable assets on the planet. But to survive the 21st century, Italy needs a revolution. Not a violent one, but a cultural one. They need to shatter the gerontocracy and let the young lead. They need to demolish the bureaucracy and embrace digitization. They need to stop protecting dying microbusinesses and start encouraging global champions. They need to make the South a land of opportunity, not a land of subsidies. It's a tall order. It requires painful reforms that no politician wants to make because they'll lose the next election. But the alternative is the slow, comfortable slide into irrelevance. The Venicification of the entire peninsula, a beautiful sinking theme park for Chinese and American tourists, inhabited by tour guides and waiters, remembering a time when they used to build empires. The choice is Italy's. But the clock is ticking. And the alarm has been ringing for 20 years. What do you think? Can Italy turn it around? Or is the curse of the Lira fatal? If you're Italian or if you love Italy, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me about the innovation you see on the ground. Or tell me I'm right and share your story of leaving. And if you learned something from this autopsy of an economy, hit that like button and subscribe. Because understanding how countries fail is the first step to making sure yours doesn't. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.